Okay.
So notice I'm sitting, and we're working on the neck, the head, the scalp, and we can do the neck with somebody lying in a prone position, but I prefer not to, and the large reason is when we're pushing on the neck, we end up pushing the neck into the table, push the head into the cradle, and it could be uncomfortable. So a lot of the work that we do on the neck can be done in a supine position, and it's comfortable for the client, and it's also very comfortable for me, because I get to sit. You know how obsessed I am about proper body mechanics.
Right.
So when you're sitting, you just relax.
Yeah.
Take a load off, get off your feet for a minute, just enjoy. So you see in the beginning here, all I'm really doing is my basic stroking techniques. I'm just going through the same motions I've done before, very light pressure. I'm just feeling for any areas of tension, right? And I'm just moving up the traps, up the back of the neck, into the hairline. I'm really not doing too much, right? Now, as we go through this, you're going to see me do a very limited number of techniques. I'm going to do muscle stripping, I'm going to do circles, and I'm going to do trigger points. Everything I do will be some combination of muscle stripping, circles, and trigger points. So to simplify your life when you're practicing, just remember that. If all you do, muscle strip, circle, muscle strip, circle, you're going to be okay. But we do want to, of course, be a little bit more specific. So now I'm going to get a little bit of motion. Now, if you get too much, just go on the shoulders, down the arms, right? Go to the neck. Okay. So what's tempting is as we go through those upper traps, you see I'm starting to do a grasping technique, but I'm being gentle, not squeezing too hard. Remember, everything we're doing right now is relaxing. So as I go through these motions during this part of the massage, what I'm thinking about and what I'm really focusing on is, as strange as it sounds, is water. That's what I'm thinking. I want to be smooth. I want to be fluid. I want all of my motions to move into each other. So as I move my body and I move his body, I'll be nice and smooth and fluid about it, right? So still doing muscle stripping one side and then the other, and putting almost no pressure on. Feeling okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you just remember, you're in charge, right? If I press too hard, tell me. I don't want it to hurt at any point. That's good? Okay. All right. So I would do that for a bit longer, practically speaking, but we'll keep it short during the demonstration. So the next thing I'll do it on both sides so everybody can see. So I'm going to start just to do muscle strips. Now I'm going to use my fingers, and as I come up the upper traps, I'm just going to curl my fingers in and go into the head. That's it. I'll just curl my fingers. So if I do one side at a time, see, once I get up into the neck, I just curl my fingers and I pull up the neck. I'm using a little bit more pressure now. Once I get into that nuchal line, the base of the skull, just now one at a time, that's how it looks like. But if I do both at a time, at the same time, nice and gentle, I move head into the head and neck. Now I'm going to curl my fingers into that nuchal line just above the ears, and then I'm just going to pull and just wait a second. Now, did anybody notice his breath? Because that's what I was watching for. Did you feel your breath?
Mm-hmm.
What you will find, and I find this honestly, 99% of the people I work on, is right in the beginning of that neck massage. You pull into that traction and you hold and you watch the belly. Sorry about that. You watch the belly, you'll see them take a big, and I'll hold that traction for sometimes 2 or 3 breaths until eventually they do that nice big breath. And it will happen almost every time. And the reason I do that is that's a sign to me that his nervous system is very quickly relaxing. So there's just something about that traction. A little gentle, I'm not pulling hard, I'm not trying to rip his head off, just gentle traction that really brings somebody into a state of relaxation. Good, so now I can keep moving. So next thing I'll do is, as I move down, I'll show you just on one side, so just do these little circles. Now I like the circles because they give me a lot of information. As I did my muscle stripping, I felt that there was one muscle tight, but as I do my circles, I feel all sorts of tight muscles, and I start to pay attention to where they are. Not that I'm trying to release the tight muscles right now because we're doing relaxation, but I certainly want to pay more attention to the areas that are tight. Good. And I would do it on both sides simultaneously, right? Just gently do these circles down, and I'm only using my fingers. And you'll notice that it's in the shoulders, My back is still pretty straight. Do some gentle gripping. Back into the neck. Up. And then down. How'd that feel? Good. Now that technique, it's simple. It doesn't take any effort or thought whatsoever. But honestly, when you do this, you could do the same technique 50 times. And every time you do it, this time I do it, I come up the side of the neck, and I go down. But the next time I do it, maybe I bring my fingers out 2 millimeters to the side, and I try that. How does that feel? And the time after that, maybe I come a little bit more to the center. So it looks like I'm doing the same thing every single time. But if I'm focused and I'm paying attention, I'm being smooth and fluid about it, every stroke is just a little bit different. That's kind of the fun of it, right? Because if you do the same thing for the entire 20 minutes you'll be doing this, or half hour, it gets real dry. Try and mix it up a little bit. Now another thing I can do is I could bring my opposite hand. You see how my opposite hand is under the neck now? So I can curl that hand under. I can pull the head to the side. And now with his head and neck in this flex position, and this hand is really keeping his head stable there. I want to make sure I've got a good grip. I'm not squeezing his head, but it feels strong and cradled. Because now what I can do is I have more access to this lateral neck. I can strip up. I can strip down. I can do circles all the way up. And all of a sudden I find a trigger point. You feel okay? So now that I've found a trigger point, I can spend some time on it. So when I spend time on it, I can hang out right here in a stretched position, or with my fingers staying on that trigger point, I can bring his head in this lax position and still hold that same point, right? Okay. Feeling okay? I follow through. And you see I'm still really trying to keep that water idea, moving his head nice and smooth and fluidly. Everything I do has a rhythm to it. There's nothing jerky, nothing quick about it. So if I take this hand again on this side, I can use just this one hand, and now I'll curl those fingers in. If I rotate his head into my fingers like that, see how his head is just a little bit extended? All of the effort is on those fingers. So I'm just holding like this, and how does that feel?
Good.
Good. Really, that's all. I'm just hanging out there just for a second. Just hold on to it. And we can follow through with that. I'm going to do the same thing on this side, right? But this thumb exists also. We can't forget about that, right? So I can squeeze the back of the neck with this thumb as I'm coming through. Not being forceful, right? Being pretty easy about it. And after I've done a few strokes, I'll just take it easy again. I'll go into those very light circles, maybe a bit of traction. I can push down on those upper traps. I can go under the clavicle. As I come into those traps, I'll just squeeze a little bit harder. You're doing okay. One side feel more tense than the other?
Do I? I don't know.
No, I feel about the same. That's good. That's good. Ask that question because when I'm squeezing here, they feel pretty symmetrical to me. But sometimes you'll feel one side that feels a bit tighter than the other. Maybe it's the left side, right? But I'm not going to say, hey, that left side's real tight, isn't it? Because it might not be. Maybe he feels the right side is tighter. And what do I know, right? I've only been doing this for 3 weeks. So as I do that, I'll say, hey, does one side feel tighter? And if he says, yes, the left side feels tighter, I think to myself, okay, now I know what it feels like. So I ask and ask and ask, and eventually you'll get a pattern. You'll understand. Circles again. So I see it's pretty simple when we work on the neck. Right? You just do these strips up and little by little, like cover the entire back of the neck. And again, you could do a ton of different strips going up and down. One thing you might want to do is maybe right here in those suboccipitals, you find a trigger point, which is pretty common. So I'll just bring my elbow out a little bit. I'll push his head into my fingers. Doing okay? So the pressure, my hand is stuck on the table. All of the pressure comes from me using this hand to push his head. So as I find that trigger point again, I just rest my hand here. I'll just push his head into my hand. okay?
Feels nice, yeah.
That's good. There we go. Yeah, pretty simple so far. Now we could do a lot more on the posterior neck, certainly, but we're going to leave it at that. Leave it relatively simple for now, right? Because we still have a lot of ground to cover. We need to go through the anterior neck, and we need to do the head, face, and scalp. So let's move into that anterior neck. In the anterior neck, we're really worried about, not worried about, we're going to work on a few muscles. That's the SCM and the scalenes. Now, in my experience, there's no way to do a relaxation massage on the scalenes. They're painful. They're no fun. But we're going to do a little bit of work on them. I just need to touch more lotion here. So as I work on these scalenes, the first thing I do in the anterior side of the neck is I just ask, is it okay if I work on the front of your neck? Because some people aren't very comfortable with this hand position, right? It might not be comfortable. So please make sure you tell them what you're going to do and ask permission. Yeah. So if I just take your neck to the side a little bit here, you can almost see the triangle. We've got the upper traps here, we've got the SCM here, and we've got the clavicle here. So we've got this little triangle. Now in that triangle, that's where the scalenes are. So in order to work on the scalenes, very gentle, I'll just push down and away, move along the clavicle, and come up. I'm anterior to the trapezius. So it's this very small area, and we're not going to spend much time there because it's not super relaxing. Now the SCM, on the other hand, I am going to spend some time on, but there's a note that I want to make sure that you're aware of. So as I come up very close to the ear, just posterior to the angle of the mandible, and just anterior to the SCM, we have the carotid artery, right? You can feel the pulse of the neck there. But what's particularly important is there's this little structure, and it's called the carotid sinus. And it's largely responsible for monitoring blood pressure within the brain. So if your blood pressure goes up, that carotid sinus says we're getting too much blood to the brain, drop blood pressure in the brain. So if I come along and I press on that, according to his nervous system, he has too much blood pressure in the brain. So his entire blood pressure drops in his whole body. What that means is they'll get lightheaded and dizzy and maybe even nauseous. So when you're working on the neck, the anterior neck, be very mindful of this region. Do not, under any circumstances, put pressure here. All right? Great. So let's get into that SCM then. With the SCM, the way that I prefer to do so is I'm just going to take his head a little bit to that same side. I'm going to use the edge of my index finger. Now I've hooked behind the SCM. You see how I'm hooked behind it? And then my thumb hooks on the anterior side of it. And I just do these light little strips. And I'm being very gentle because it can be quite painful. I'll move up little by little. Now eventually when you're comfortable, I'll teach you how to do a longer strip along the SCM. But for now, really, these nice, gentle squeezes. Now right there, I felt the trigger point, so if I wanted to, I could hold that. You're doing okay? Does that refer anywhere? Does it go up into your head or anything?
A little.
A little bit? Okay.
Yeah. A little painful.
A little painful? When you're working on the neck and you find a trigger point, ask, does that refer anywhere? Because maybe it goes up and into the temples. And if he has temporal headaches, that might be what's causing it, is a trigger point here in the upper traps. Right? You're doing okay there? Yeah, I feel that. But now here's another important note. Massage is amazing for tension headaches. However, migraines, a massage will aggravate it as often as fix it. So if somebody has a migraine, proceed with caution. Now I'm just performing a trigger point on the upper traps here. I found it, so I might as well hang out there, and I'm just using my fingers, just pushing. Right? I could just, that's actually on the levator. Now that I feel it, I'm just using my fingers and pushing.
If you didn't push it, I didn't know I had a tender spot there.
Yeah, so that's a secondary or a trigger point, not a primary or a active. Doing okay? And after you do a trigger point, always do a little bit of kneading. Now within that neck, maybe your fingers get tired. You don't have strong enough fingers to do so. That's okay. You can use your knuckles too. So I'll just lead with that little finger on the posterior side of the neck. I'll just use my knuckles doing the same motions. So kind of doing this, all right? Communicate with your partner, of course. Make sure that nothing's painful as we do this. Okay, how you feeling?
Good.
Now we're gonna go into what's my favorite part, and that's going into the scalp and face. So the transition, I'll come up the back of the neck. I'll do a little bit of traction, and then I'll just move into the hairline, all the way up the scalp. Now we're just gonna do a nice little scalp massage. Feels great. Now we move into the face. On the face, we'll do some swiping techniques, right? So we spread the skin on the forehead. You can use your fingers, you can use the palm of your hands. And then we'll go into the temples. Being mindful of your pressure, we're trying to relax here, so we'll just do nice little circles. And then I'll jump over into that masseter. Now when you work on the masseter, you see how I'm pushing inferiorly? Or I can come superior. Now he's got a bit of a beard, so that might not be comfortable, but when you do this, ask your partner or your client, which do you prefer? Do you prefer when I go down, or do you prefer when I move up?
Down.
Down? And people are different. Not everybody likes the same thing. Like up might be very uncomfortable for one person, so ask. You could again do those circles. You can move back into those temples. Now the pressure I'm using on the masseter, it's firm. It's not hard, but it's firm. The masseter can take quite a bit of pressure before a person feels sensation. Okay, and again in the scalp, you see I'm just squeezing.
There's no muscle there.
No, but there's the gallia panoramicum, which comes from the frontalis to the occipitalis. It's this big bit of connective tissue. So as I just move the skin over the scalp, it feels really nice to have all of that tissue worked on and released, right? You doing okay? Does that feel okay?
Very good.
Yeah, it's my favorite part. I love it. I love it. Let me come back down to that neck. Do another big stroke, a little bit of traction. Don't be afraid to use your fingernails, right? Moving up into that scalp. Right, pretty simple. We're going to get into much more detail when we get into Tuinan therapy as far as how to do a face and scalp massage. But for now, we're just going to relax. So before, what I was thinking is water, flow, right? But now that I'm on the scalp, head, and face, what I'm thinking is sleep. Just sleep. I'm trying to just be relaxed. So I'm talking loud, but when I'm doing the head, scalp, and face, I close my eyes and I really just try and get into this relax on because it feels so good. And it's a great way to end the massage, and you can just feel free to zone out and fall asleep if you want. I'm going to be gentle and I'll still do all these same techniques, right? How's that? That's making sense? So again, as a brief review, it's only a few main techniques. We do muscle stripping along the posterior neck muscles. We do these circles along those posterior neck muscles. We do trigger points. We do traction. Traction, we don't need to lean back. We're just applying a little bit of traction on the scalp. On that SCM, we're going to grip it. One finger and our thumb. As we move the head around, we really want to make sure that the supporting hand is strong and stable. I don't want his head moving like this. He's going to feel unstable and tighten up, so I really want to make sure that he's stable as I rotate. And I can do all those same techniques. Yeah. Okay. That's it.
Great.
You good? Wonderful. Thank you.